Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Yelena and I am the Marketing Communications Specialist here at Meridian Link. Today I am joined by my colleagues, the MLX Consulting team, Orlando Rossi, Managing Director, Kevin Fields, Business Consultant, and Adam Massey, Business Consultant. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. They will be discussing best practices on how to safeguard your financial institution against disparate impact. A few housekeeping items before we get started. If you would like to submit a question, you may do so anytime during the webinar in the question portion of the menu panel. We will do our best to answer every question, which will be towards the end of the webinar. If your question is not answered during the Q&A session, someone from our team will reach out to you personally within the next several business days with an answer. Additionally, there is a PDF version of this webinar slides in the handout section of your menu panel if you would like a copy. And a recording of this webinar will be sent to you within several business days of the live event if you'd like to rewatch it or share it with one of your colleagues. And with that, I'm handing it over to Orlando.
And thank you, Yelena, and good afternoon, morning, everyone. My name is Orlando Rossi, and I'm the Managing Director of the MLX Consulting team here at Meridian Link. I have more than 15 years of experience in the financial industry. I have worked all over the world helping financial institutions optimize their processes through data analytics and business best practices. Here with me are Adam Massey and Kevin Fields. If you guys want to quickly introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I'm Adam Massey. Been here on the MLX Consulting team for a few years now, working on the data reporting project.
Hi guys, I'm Kevin Fields. I'm here from the business consulting team as well. I've been on the team for a couple of years. I work with the data analytics and reporting team, and I specialize in Reveal Pro and the disparate impact analysis we have here.
All right, so today we're going to give you an overview of the MLX Consulting team, what the disparate impact analysis is, how the analysis should be performed and what should include a business case, and then we're going to have some time dedicated to Q&A. So first of all, who are the MLX consultants? Well, as you can see on this slide, we are a group of professionals who provide analytics and consultancy services in relation to the main credit processes: origination, monitoring, and collection. Our focus is on improving the efficiency and effectiveness of credit processes and optimizing the credit decisioning through data analytics. As you can see at the bottom left on the slide, we are extremely focused on the performance, and our mission is to provide our clients with the best possible satisfaction, value, and quality. We strive to create and maintain 100% level of client satisfaction with every project. In fact, we currently have 100% referenceable clients. In other words, every client we have worked with is a positive reference for us. We are proud of this achievement, and we definitely want to continue this way. We are organized like a typical consulting firm. Our team members start at the consultant level, and they work their way up step by step. So we have two main practices. One consulting practice which designs and optimizes processes and IT systems. The goal here is helping our partners leverage our software solutions in the best possible way. Another practice, the green one, specializes in decisioning of optimizing your basically decision-making process especially through the data analytics. And the main goal here is to increase your level of auto decisioning and optimize the way you do your credit risk assessment. With the two practices, we can guarantee 360-degree support, processes, and data analytics. We can guarantee what we call the continuous improvement approach. We also dedicate some percentage of our time to research and development, and our research extends to the creation and distribution of industry knowledge through the publication of ebooks. The latest two ebooks that we have published cover a couple of very interesting topics. The first one is related to the topic of how a custom scorecard can help maximize the value generation through a better selection of the right applicants, optimization of losses, and interest inflow. At the same time, a custom scorecard can help create more efficiency through more auto decisioning. We will see this in a couple of slides. The second ebook is related to how better select a thin file population, and you can request these ebooks on our website, or you can definitely reach out to me. All right, this slide shows the most important services we provide through the two practices. Blue is business consulting, or dark blue, and green is analytics. As you can see on the slide, on the left, we have our managed services. Review Pro is meant to support our partners by providing everything that an analytics department would do. At the bottom, you can see Admin Pro. Admin Pro is meant to support our partners by providing what a system admin department would do. So the institution, through these two services, can leverage all our expertise for a fraction of the cost of building those departments. On the right, instead, you can see some of the specific projects we do to help our partners generate more value. For example, we have custom scorecards or process optimization projects. And this slide shows the benefits associated with two of the most important services we provide. The first box shows the gain through custom scorecards. We see gains up to 80% in auto decisioning and up to 35% more business. When our partners don't want to implement a custom scorecard, we can help them gain more auto decisioning through the decisioning optimization analytics project. We see in the second box the lift, in this case, up to 60% of auto decisioning. And also in this case, there is a lot of value generation. All right, this slide shows some of the partners we worked with in the last few years. You can see how much experience our team has and how flexible we are. We have very large institutions in terms of asset size, as well as very small ones. But no matter what the size of the institution is, we take care of our partners in the same way and with the same dedication. That's why we have 100% customer satisfaction. Having said this, I'm going to let Adam introduce the concept of disparate impact and what we do with the disparate impact analysis.
Thank you, Orlando. We're going, like you said, we're going to cover real quickly here just kind of what is a disparate impact analysis. And Kevin, since this is kind of your specialty, if you ever feel like I'm leaving something out, please let us all know.
I'll be sure to interject. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So first we need to start overall. And really the first idea is, what is disparity? Disparity is pretty simply just treating people who look the same on paper differently. That's all it comes down to. So there are two main regulations pertaining to this, separated by intentionality. So there's the unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices, which I'll call UDAP down the road. And this is everything where you intentionally treat people differently. Deceptive marketing offers, abusive collection tactics, these sorts of things. This is referred to as disparate treatment. Now, under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECOA, and Regulation B from the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Board, these guys cover the unintentional disparate treatment, or in this case called disparate impact. So this is things like if there are biased attributes leading to adverse decisioning, or if the dealer markups are proving to be weighed differently across a similar population by one of the protected classes. A little more on that in a second. First, as we're looking at disparate impacts, it's important to think about where this could happen. So real quickly, before we go to the next slide, I want everyone to just take a moment in your head, think about where you imagine disparate impact probably happens in the lending section. So just think about it for a second. If it weren't copyrighted, we could have the Jeopardy theme right now. Okay, so everybody's got an answer, hopefully. more than likely, you're all correct. It happens everywhere. It can happen from the design of your strategy down to the models that you implement and the attributes that you use, and it can happen on either indirect or direct. So the things that can lead to disparate impact are issues such as if there are disadvantages to certain groups in your credit risk or your pricing models, or if those models include any sort of attributes that are proxies for protected classes. And then if the attributes that you're using for decisioning or pricing just are not up to date with the newest regulations. Things change constantly, and I'm sure you all know even better than I do. And, sometimes you may not have caught, what was that? What did the NCUA send out, or what was that latest FDIC posting? If you missed it, you might be in trouble there. And on the indirect side, we often see this associated with discretionary and subjective dealer markups. Often, I'm not accusing anyone, but, it's kind of a known stereotype that sometimes that pushy used car dealer might add a little bit more to the loan if, somebody doesn't speak English very well, or often, one of the older stereotypes where they try to charge women a little bit more. And these kinds of things can show up in your data, and it can actually cause a problem for you, as we'll explain in a little bit. It can also happen on the direct side, where we see loan decisions made by people can be flawed, because people are flawed. It happens. As much as we would like to beat the humanity out of some people, we can't. They will still make very human decisions. And so at the end of the day, really what you need to make sure when you're doing some sort of disparate impact analysis is make sure that everybody in a similar credit situation walks away with similar loan terms. So what exactly is disparate impact analysis? We've thrown around a few phrases here. So like we said, the CFPB issued Regulation B and the ECOA in order to create protected classes that they had seen had a tendency to be discriminated against. These are broken up loosely into race and ethnicity, age, where it's generally 62 or above, gender, if they receive part of their income through Social Security. There are a couple of other minor ones, but these are the heavy hitters. These are the MVPs of the disparate impact game. And what the ECOA and Regulation B really get down to is that as the lenders of the auto loans, if there are any issues seen, either in decisioning or even in pricing, even if it's the fault of the dealer, you still underwrote that loan, so you are still responsible for that. And if you're wondering, who is getting caught for this, well, perhaps unsurprisingly, New York State has been a little bit active in this recently. The State Department of Financial Services has gone against a couple of people within the last couple months, really. One of the more high-profile ones was the Apple Card, which has been accused of gender bias. The algorithm that they use to make their decisions on credit limits has been shown to treat women differently and give them lower credit limits than it gave to men. And then also Optum, Optum has been shown to have some potential racial bias in their triage algorithm. And both of these are now in trouble because they didn't bother to look for this issue. So how do you look for this issue? Well, first thing you need to make sure that you do is proactively monitor. You want to make sure that you're looking for it before somebody tells you to start looking for it. And you want to make sure that if there's disparity, you're the one who finds it, not the FRB, not the FDIC, not the CFPB. You need to make sure that it's you, because you're going to be a lot less harsh on yourself than they are. You need to do this regularly. We recommend an annual rhythm. That way, every year, as things change, as regulations change, populations change, you're keeping an eye on it. And you need to make sure that you look at this as if you are the regulator. You're not the financial institution hoping that you don't find a disparity. You are a very closely scrutinized person making sure that there is no disparity. You need to make sure that everything that you do is driven by your data. You can't just, go kind of take a sample of asking people, hey, have you been doing this today? Have you been causing issues? Because nobody's going to say that they are. You need to make sure that you're using your data and really digging into it. You need to make sure that you're looking at all of your loan terms using the categories set up in the ECOA, the protected class categories that we discussed before. That's what the regulators are looking for. That's what you need to be looking for. Things like gender, race, ethnicity, these often are not on your applications. They can't be. But that doesn't mean that the assumed race or gender don't impact the decision. So you need to make sure that you're inferring that. And the CFPB and the FRB both provide methods for doing those. So whoever your regulator is, make sure that you're using that methodology. And it's also recommended that you test for statistical significance, because that's, we are analytical people, so of course we always ask, okay, well, there's a result. Does that result entirely matter? Because you may have, hey, there's no disparity, but it's not a statistically significant result. You got to keep an eye on that. Or it may be a non-statistically significant disparity, in which case, there may or may not be an issue, but at least you know what to keep an eye on there.
Could be like a volume issue that you need to continue to monitor over a larger time frame or something like that.
Exactly. Thank you. So once you've done all that, the key is to make sure that you manage to identify all of your mitigating factors. And we go into these a little bit more in a couple slides here. But basically, these are just anything that if you find disparity overall, you're able to say, okay, I do have a perfectly legitimate business reason as to why this disparity happened. It's just based on population distribution among your decisioning factors.
And the regulatory bodies do allow this. If there is disparity, if you can justify it using legitimate business factors is the words they like to use, then sometimes it might not be considered disparate. For instance, distributions across like credit scores.
Yeah. And if you do find something, take that corrective action and make sure that you record any discussions that you have. If you're, contacting your dealers to make sure that they start pricing correctly, send an email to follow up on that phone call. If you're having to discuss with one of your underwriters, make sure that you somehow have something that shows that you've been having those discussions. Because when the regulator comes to talk, you can give them this evidence.
And just to touch upon that, like even if you're talking to your dealers just via the phone, it's a good idea to follow up via email and just say, here's what we talked about in our phone conversation, just to keep that documented and stuff. Regulators do take a look, and if you're acting in good faith, that does give you some brownie points.
And make sure that all of this discussion happens very quickly. The second you find an issue, you needed to have already had this discussion. And you need to keep monitoring for changes, which means you've gotten to the end of the Sistine Chapel, time to go back to the beginning and start all over again. That's like we said, you got to do this regularly because this industry changes a lot, and you got to make sure that you're not causing issues under those new changes. So we've just given you a pretty good overview. Now let's kind of go into this a little more specifically. The recommended process for actual disparate impact analysis, we like to break it up into these four categories: the startup activities, data gathering, the actual analysis, and then the presentation of findings. So when you're starting up this analysis, you need to go through and look at all of your decisioning cutoffs, your decisioning factors. factors. If you are decisioning pretty much entirely off of LTV, PTI, DTI, and credit score, you can't use term as a mitigating factor because you're not decisioning on it. And if you're just pricing on credit score, LTV and term, then you can't use DTI or PTI to mitigate pricing disparity because that's not how you price. So you need to make sure that all of that lines up with what you're actually doing.
And just to follow up even more on that, not just using the legitimate business factors such as your credit score, but it also needs to be the buckets that you use to decision off of. So like your A tiers, you can't just say, oh, well, theirs is higher than theirs. It needs to be that they're in the A tier, and this is how all the approval rates in the A tier should look.
Exactly. Thanks for that clarification. The next step, once you actually know what you're going to be looking at and how you're evaluating it, now you've got to collect your data. This part is honestly kind of the most time-consuming part of it. You need to make sure that you've got all the data you need, possibly a little bit more data than you need just for safety. And you need to make sure that that data is good, clean, that you can actually trust the results you get off of it. In any sort of database analysis, a good chunk of the time of the analysis is devoted to data cleaning. It's kind of the old joke in the analytics world is that once you get into a data job, 98% of what you do is actually getting the data looking good, and then 2% of what you do is actually doing something with that data. And as we stated before, both the CFPB and the FRB do provide their own data sets in order to help you identify things like race, ethnicity, and gender. So you need to make sure that those are the methods that you're using. You can use any method you like, but at the end of the day, it's easier to justify the method to the regulator if it's the method that they told you that they're going to use. So it just makes life a little bit easier at the end of the day. And depending on who your regulator is, like we said, they do have their own methodologies. CFPB's methodology is a little more in-depth than the FRB. So if the CFPB is the one that you know you're going to be working with, make sure that that's the one that you're using. And then once you've got your nice, pretty data set and you've got all of your inferences and percentages and all of that, now it's time to actually go in and do your analysis. You start with the high level. Just look at your general population. Within this period, do we see a disparity between the approval rate or pricing rate of the non-protected class versus the protected class? If you do see that disparity, then you dig in a little deeper. What protected classes are you actually seeing the disparity on? Do the deep dive. Look at it by credit score. Can you say, okay, well, it's isolated to the A tier. Dig in a little bit deeper. Does the PTI further explain that? Kevin's going to explain that a little more thoroughly once we get into our business case. But you need to make sure that you're looking into it as deeply as you can, as far as you can, and as completely as you can. Because you want to make sure that if you do see disparity, you know if it is really a problem so that you know who you have to talk to. And always document results. Always, always, always write stuff down. If you're not writing stuff down, why are you doing it? You have no evidence. And then finally, you present your findings. If you have to present it to your board, present it to your board. If you need to talk to your dealers, talk to your dealers. If you need to talk to your underwriters, talk to your underwriters. Make sure that all of the key stakeholders in this process know if you find a problem so that everybody knows to keep a watch out. And if there's not a problem, make sure you let everybody know, hey, we're good. Continue as usual. And make sure that you tell them, don't change whatever you're doing now, don't change it. You're good. Keep doing that. And so to kind of look a little more deeply at how this actually looks, I am going to hand this over to Kevin, since he does have little bit more experience on this specific part than I do.
All right, thank you, Adam. Okay, so for this example here, this is an example of how we, or what we mean when we say deep dive. So at the very top left box, you can see the analytic breakdowns. So if you have different banks all across the nation, we might not want to just lump all that population together. Maybe we want to look at that separately, or by dealer. We can also look by loan officer if needed, and by state if you do decision differently in different states because you have different banks or whatnot. And then once we look at it by the overall, which we tend to just start by year, unless we have more information knowing that you want to look by the bank level or anything like that, then we can start to check for the disparity, right? So just to quickly go down on this middle chart, you'll see that right now we see the 0.15 disparity difference between the approval rates, or 15 bips. So it shows that people who are white tended to get approved 15% or 0.15% more than the protected class here. So when we look at them like this, we tend to break it down by the legitimate business factors, and in this case, it's the credit score. And then when we look at it by tier, we can see that the dealer markup disparity, or the variance between them, are less than the 15 bits, and that it's less than our threshold, which is different depending on what rates we're looking at and so on. So in this situation, we would say that the credit score mitigates the disparity seen in the overall because of the population distribution across the credit score tiers. And therefore, we would show this on the report and document that we saw it overall, but we were able to explain it using our credit score, a legitimate business factor. And some other mitigating factors that we could look at this by instead of just credit scores might be loan to value, it could be the term, the debt to income, the payment to income, whatever you use to decision that, in this case, approval rates. And now I just want to jump into a business case here to give an example of what we kind of give a presentation on the report and how we dive into that and how it works over time. So this business partner of ours is a large institution located in the Southwest. They were looking to comply with regulatory standards involving disparate impact, specifically when it came to their approval rates and their dealer markup. And their portfolio is mostly indirect lending, and so we just kind of drill down on that. That's over 90% of the loans that they do. So the results were that we identified and explained variance in rates using their legitimate business factors. We found some disparity with significance that was unable to be mitigated in some earlier analysis. Over time, via communicating with them and working pretty intimately with this partner, we were able to communicate those findings and give them recommended actions. And then we were able to see improvements over time.
And Kevin, just a quick note, since these do look differently between the regulators, which regulators did they use again?
They use FRB, mostly because when you break their population down by their protected classes, their population was 98% Hispanic and white, with very small populations for Pacific Islanders and other protected classes like that for ethnicity.
Okay.
So on this one, we're going to show an example of how we deep dove in their report here and how we're able to show like a multi-step deep dive to explain using legitimate business factors. So anyway, like I was saying, this is how we deep dive in a multi-step process using the mitigating factors to determine whether there's disparity of significance that needs to be looked into further or not. So in this case, on the very top chart, you'll see that we're looking at a specific time frame, and we're comparing the approval rate of applications where the applicant is less than 62 and where the application is over the age of 62. And in the top box, again, you can see the approval rate variance here in the kind of goldish yellow color is 6.82, meaning there's a whole 6.82% difference between the approval rates here. And the significant test showed that this was significant, meaning that we needed to dive in a little farther. So when we decided to look at this by the overall credit tiers, using their credit score tier breakdown for decisioning, we found that it was mitigated and not significant in all tiers with the exception of the A and the E tiers. So then we take the A tier and we look even farther by the overall PTI. So we're looking at the time frame in the A credit tier by overall PTI, and we see that in all of the PTI buckets, the approval rate variance is not significant. So we're able to say that we're able to explain this by the population distribution across the mitigating factors, where we feel comfortable enough to say that this does not need to be looked into further, although we do recommend to continue to monitor this to make sure that we're always able to explain this using legitimate business factors. Move to the next slide. All right, so this is from their very first report, the same Southwestern institution, where we're looking at the approval rate between the Hispanic and the non-Hispanic populations. As you can see in the top chart, over time from 2014 to 2017, there was approval rate variance. It looked like it was kind of getting continually worse, actually, against the protected class. From those timeframes, we were unable to explain it using any legitimate business factors. That includes LTV, PTI, credit score, term, age of vehicle, and so on. And so we're going to show you how we tried to do it, though. So for this time frame, the second half of 2016, first half of 2017, the approval rate variance, again, is still disparate, and it's significant. When we look at it by those legitimate business factors, the closest that we were able to explain it by was the overall PTI, where it was not significant in any bucket unless their PTI was less than 4.5%. This was the farthest we could go. So on our report, we explained to them that this was all we could manage to do, and that we really recommend them to look specifically at the applications where there is someone flagged as Hispanic and has an overall PTI less than 4.5. We provided them the application IDs they could use to match back to their loan origination system, and they were able to dive in and see maybe why there was why that's happening. And we also were able to provide the institution the name of the decisioning loan officers who made those decisions, just so they can try to address that the best they can internally. And then we'll go to their latest report, where this is from August 2018 through July 2019. And we can see that we still have some approval rate variance here between the Hispanic and non-Hispanic populations. It is about 200 bits lower than what we were seeing earlier. And again, we try to look at that by the overall PTI, since that was the closest we were able to get to last time. And now it explains it completely, even in the A tier, to where it is less than 300 bits across the board, and it's not statistically significant disparity here. It was explained by the distribution within those decisioning buckets. On the right chart, we're looking at it by the app month, just to see, kind of like keep track of how they're doing over time and if it's getting worse or better. As we can see, when we just look at the approval rate column here, the variance column, that it is getting significantly better as we move into 2019. And in the last couple of months, it's almost negligible, the difference between the approval rate Hispanic and the approval rate non-Hispanic. And so some of the key facts and takeaways here is that there's lower overall approval rate disparity in their latest report compared to the last 3 or 4 years. The population distribution across the overall PTI now fully explains the variance between the Hispanic and non-Hispanic population. And when looking at the variance over time by month, it's a significant decrease in the protected class variance. And this has been a partnership that's gone back and forth over a couple of years, where we're frequently in touch about how, every 6 months, just kind of talking about where they're at here and what kind of progress they're making, and when we're going to do our next report for them in the time frame. But yeah, that's all I have for this. It's just to show you how keeping track of it and continuously monitoring and addressing any sort of disparities can make a difference and help you be protected against regulations. I'm going to pass it back over to Orlando to finish.
Thank you, Kevin. So the advantages of going with our report, first of all, is straightforward, meaning like we are going to use exactly the same methodology used or proposed by regulators, meaning like the Federal Reserve or the CFPB. So we're going to use the same type of calculations that they use in order to determine the race and the gender. As Adam was saying, we cannot, like as financial institutions, during the, and you know better than us, during the loan origination process, we cannot collect information about the age or the ethnicity. So we need to derive all the protected classes by the information that we can collect that we have available.
And this is Kevin again. Upon request, we will provide you how we matched up the data to infer this, and you're able to try to replicate this yourself and validate it if you'd like to do that.
Thank you. So then we also provide you with insights and analytics, and not just the data. So we're going to go back and forth, as Kevin was saying during the business case presentation, in order basically to give you evidence or recommendations on the areas that you could improve in terms of like your process, origination process, or even like the underwriting approach. Is fully customized to each lender, meaning like we are going to work with you closely in order to make the report fully custom for you, based on your needs, based on your organization, based on your footprint, based on the population you serve.
And it's also, again, how you decision. And this is a back and forth. We don't just present you the report and like dump it on you and then walk away. We want to hear your feedback, and we want to discuss the findings with you so that we can make sure that we're doing this properly. An example of that is from the last business case. When we're looking at the population with co-applicants, we were averaging the credit scores. We found out after the first draft delivery that they take the lowest credit score. So that open communication and talking back and forth, we were able to make that change, and it did explain some of the disparity that we were able to see.
Yeah, then we do also analysis of the loan terms and risk metrics to mitigate any observed disparity. As like Kevin was explaining, sometimes we see disparity, but it's not like real disparity, because then we dive into the data and we see there are like mitigating factors like the FICO score, the PTI, or the DTI, other variables that will explain the apparently evident disparity that there is between two classes. So we do a lot of analysis in order to try to find mitigating factors in order basically to justify any potential like fair lending issue. We do the significant testing of all the findings, so we apply this very advanced methodology to basically justify all the findings, and the approach is totally transparent. So we're going to like deliver to you all the material that we use and the analysis that we do. We're going to disclose with you the calculations and everything we do. So our goal is basically to make you aware of everything that we do during the analysis. And if you ask us, or during the interactive process that we have, we're going to do more research. We're going to apply more metrics and more drill downs in order to give you what we always say, 100% customer satisfaction. All right, so we have the Q&A part of the webinar. Yelena, if you want to give us some questions, if we have any.
Yes, we do. Just a second. I'm going to pull them up. We apologize for some of our technical issues here. Bear with us for just a moment. Okay, so let's jump right into the questions. So how do you know if you infer the correct race or gender?
Hey, I'll handle that one. So ultimately, whether or not we actually are able to determine the exact race and gender of the applicant isn't super important actually, because the idea here is that you're only going to be given, a name, an address. You're going to only be given this kind of information. So if there is any issue by in the markup or in the approval rate, it's going to be done based on, the human mind inferring that race and that gender. And that's what the methodologies aim to try to recreate. A good example of that would be a friend of mine. Her name is April Martinez. And a lot of people see her name and assume that she is Latino. She's actually Filipino. So, a lot of times she when someone sees her name, they're going to think, oh, okay, it's Hispanic. And they already begin to make any assumptions that they have based on that. And then they meet her, and immediately it's always actually kind of entertaining to me. You can usually see a little bit of cognitive disconnect happen. Like, oh, you're April Martinez. Okay. But anybody making a decision about her is going to do it assuming that she's Hispanic. So that's what the point of the inference is to try to recreate the inherent biases of the human mind, basically.
And just to follow up on that, the regulators also won't know whether they inferred correctly. So it just comes down to what you think the name is based off of the name. There's no way to get it 100% without asking questions that you're not really allowed to ask.
All right, Yelena.
Thank you. So your example only showed Hispanic and non-Hispanic. What if our population is more complicated than that?
Yeah, I can take that. So the FRB methodology is where we use the Hispanic versus non-Hispanic for ethnicity. If you have a more varied population, we tend to use the CSPB methodology, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, is more geocode-based, where you kind of use like a database to match off the names, and then it's like a percent calculation using the BIG something method.
Don't worry about it.
Some methodologies. But yeah, we're able to address that as well, as long as you have the population volume to do the significant testing on.
Okay, thank you. So what does the deliverable actually look like?
I'll take that again. So the deliverable ends up being, after you get your Reveal Pro report, we do a separate delivery of the disparate impact analysis. It's a Word document that is around 10 to 20 pages, depending on what's in our findings. It also depends on what rates or credit limits that we're looking at and the protected classes that we're looking at. So to answer the question, it's about 10 to 20 pages on a Word document, and then the deliverable will give you the pivot tables and any other additional requested information, like how we matched up or inferred what protected class people were in.
Okay, great. So let's do one more question. How do we act on the results?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So a lot of that is going to depend on, what is found and where it's found. So for instance, if there is found to be approval rate disparity that we can't mitigate, then it comes down to figuring out, is there something else that we weren't able to drill down into that's causing this issue? So at that point, we generally recommend looking at it at a loan level, and we can also provide you information such as who decisioned that loan, because it may turn out that it can be, really taken down to just a couple of people who are, letting any sort of inherent biases affect that decisioning. If it is found to be an issue on the dealer side, dealer markup generally, then we can let you know which dealers are actually showing the disparity, and that way you know which dealers you need to work with, because ultimately you're the one held responsible. So if you're going to continue partnering with that dealer, you need to make sure that they are not creating an issue for you.
And like we said earlier, it's very important to like continue to document this stuff and keep track of it to show that you're acting in good faith and that you're actively working to fix the issue and not just kick it under the rug.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Orlando.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just want to present this last slide, a slide I'm very proud of. What our clients say about us. They say, and you can see some extracts from actual emails that we received at the end of the project, but they say some buzzwords that you can take there. Organized, knowledgeable, attentive listeners, excellent problem solvers, hardworking, humble. We deliver high quality, a solid team, and provide exceptional knowledge transfer and extraordinary professionals. So we received so many emails praising the work of the team. Among the different comments we received, for sure, I was impressed with one in particular, the one that you can read at the bottom of the slide. We feel like this was one of the best decisions we could have made. This is because it was a small credit union and our project sponsor fought to have the budget for the project, but in the end, her effort was greatly rewarded. Well, thank you all for the interest in our services. You have my email address on this slide, orlando.rossi@meridianlink.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me with your questions. We will certainly find the best possible solution for any of your needs. Thank you again, and sorry for the technical problem we had. We will make sure it will not happen next webinar.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Once again, sorry for the technical difficulties, and if you'd like to rewatch this webinar or forward it to a colleague of yours, I will be sending out the recording in the next several business days. And with that, we will catch you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.